Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brad Radcliffe. I'm with Bormer Corporation with the Logistics Division. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Applications Engineering. I will be the moderator for today's educational panel, and we're going to focus on how to integrate proven solution with the next-gen bleeding edge technologies and what that looks like. Joining me today as panelists are Lou Cerny and Tim Jalimi. Lou is a vice president with Sedlak. Sedlak is an independent supply chain consulting firm. They partner with clients to select and implement material handling solutions and the supporting information systems that optimize supply chains. Tim is a project engineer focusing on facilities and material handling solutions for one of the largest global parcel carriers. And combined, Lou and Tim have 50 plus years of supply chain engineering, management, consulting under their belts. And so they're going to bring a breadth of knowledge to the conversation and hopefully drop us some insights on to the latest trends and what everyone's seeing going on out there today. So Lou and Tim, I appreciate you joining us, and we'll kind of get started. So I think everybody recognizes that over the last couple of years, we've been in a transformational moment for supply chains. I believe that people felt like that it was accelerating and that we had already felt a lot of the pain that comes along with the transformational event. And then the last 12 months and the challenges really hit. And so the shift from a brick and mortar model of sales and distribution to a direct to consumer has accelerated. And so what's happened over the last 12 months is act as a catalyst to accelerate this transformational process. And anytime that you're in a time of transition, it not only poses a tremendous amount of challenges, but opportunities. And so we're going to kind of talk about some of that today. What's interesting is this comes at a time in history where our computing process power is off the scale now, and it's opened up a world of technology that 10 or 15 years ago that were kind of unimaginable, or at least they were imaginable but not attainable or achievable. So now I've got a transformational moment, and I've got access to technologies that have never been there before. And I think everybody's trying to figure out what the roadmap looks like. When you look at, thought leaders like Jeff Bezos at Amazon, and they talk about failing often and failing fast, I don't think they're supporting a business model of failure. I think what they're trying to suggest is that we have to learn very quickly and we have to grow. And that if we're not doing that, we're taking a half a step back. And so, part of what we're talking about today is how companies that maybe don't have the resources of the larger companies can take advantage of the advances in technology without missing a beat for customer service levels and meeting the market demand. So we're going to do this in a couple different ways. We're going to talk about three things. We'll talk about change management. We'll talk about people, process, and technology. And then we'll end up and we'll talk a little bit about how to make solutions flexible and scalable so that we're building for the future. So, Lou, when we start talking about change management and we start talking about the challenges of integrating best in breed technology, I'm curious what you're seeing in the marketplace, looking at a broader audience. What are the end users today challenged with, and what are they bringing to the plate? The biggest challenges that you're trying to solve for.
Well, basically it starts with the fact that there are so many options out there these days that, trying to pick the correct solution to meet your needs is always a challenge. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the technology such as, AI and, machine learning has certainly come a long way, probably more so than ever in the last 2 years or so. I like to look at it kind of as an alphabet of solutions that are out there. You've got AGVs, AMRs, WES, GTP, et cetera, that people have an opportunity to choose from. And it's a matter of understanding, what are my needs and how are those needs met by these various technologies, and then selecting those that are most appropriate for them.
Right, exactly. No, I appreciate that. You're right. It is a minefield of opportunity, and everybody's got the latest and greatest on how to solve your problem. So, Tim, when you look at the operations piece of this, and when you actually have to implement these technologies, I'm kind of curious. How do you go about selecting what's right for you and balance that moving forward, that progress with staying stable and meeting customer demand? It's a very tightrope to walk, to walk.
Yeah, from a deployment, equipment deployment point of view, anytime you introduce a new product, a new technology, there's always skepticism with the operators. So what we don't want to do as the implementer is we don't want to create a situation where there's downtime involved. We don't want to blow up our building. Every time you have a downtime, something bad usually happens. We don't want to do anything to impact service. So we always think in terms of maybe you have a path to maintain service some way, somehow, and create some kind of redundancy as well, if you can. So, but that's always the challenge is overcoming the skepticism that comes with new technologies in our buildings.
It's a skepticism from all level, right? There's upper management, the skeptical, they're being asked to spend a capital spend, and there's operator skepticism because they've done it the same way for years, and now we're asking them to do something that's slightly different, right? So some of it's about managing expectations at the top and the bottom, and helping everybody understand that this is transformational, that we're going to learn, we're going to develop processes around this. So that's fantastic. When you look at the biggest challenges, Lou, that people are bringing to the table, what are we really trying to solve for? I mean, we know that the orders and the customer demand is really changed. What is the impact on the four-wall fulfillment center today? What is that biggest thing that we're trying to use technology to solve for?
Well, I think this kind of leads into one of your other topics, but the real answer there is they're trying to come up with solutions that are going to pretty much future-proof their operations as much as possible. And no one's crystal ball certainly would have predicted what we've gone through in the last 12 to 18 months here. But it's really understanding, okay, how do these solutions allow me to basically meet the needs of the business, be brought online without interrupting the operation, as Tim mentions, and really being able to have the opportunity for those solutions to kind of grow and morph as the business needs require. And it's a lot easier done with solutions that aren't necessarily bolted to the floor of facilities, but those that potentially have the ability to grow and change and morph with the business.
Right. Hey, Tim, when you look at everything that's going on, you talk about the skepticism. And as you have experienced rolling out these changes in this transformational process, designing new buildings, looking at new technologies, what are the biggest misconceptions that you have to deal with in your internal organization and selling it externally so that your customers have the confidence level that you're going to be able to meet their needs? I'm kind of curious, what misconceptions do you see out there in the marketplace?
Well, typically what happens when you introduce a new product, we want to convince people, we have to justify the technology, first of all, from a cost standpoint. So we want to make sure that we are not introducing a piece of product that's going to cost more than it's actually doing as far as benefiting the company. So cost justification is key. But to do that, we also have to measure that against the tight margin that we're facing today when it comes to shipping packages. It's getting the needs are getting lower and lower in terms of what consumers are willing to pay to ship product, and so we have to balance the cost of new technology against the cost of providing service. So that's always a challenge for us. It's not so much a misconception; it's just a known fact that typically when you introduce something new, it's a cost associated with it, and it's just a matter of us doing our due diligence to make sure that we're not spending more than we're getting out of the equipment.
Right, exactly. So Lou, what do you see, just from a broader market, what do you see from misconceptions as people start looking at the myriad of options from a technology selection?
Okay, well, I think part of the misconceptions is just generally, no one likes change. So there's always that misconception that, if we're bringing in a new technology, it's really either to eliminate jobs or to, basically have some unintended consequence when in fact, these solutions are really being brought in for several reasons. Obviously, customer service and cost is part of that. But in addition to that, just finding labor and keeping that labor is a critical element. So people tend to think that, if we look at higher levels of mechanization, we're really trying to eliminate jobs. What we're really trying to do is meet the needs of a growing demand that's associated, especially more so now than ever, as a result of the movement to direct to consumer versus, say, the retail shopping experience. So, that's what I'd say. And and the key here is always to have clear communication, to let everyone from the top level executives all the way down the line to make sure that they understand why you're doing the changes, how those changes are going to be brought on, and stressing obviously the positives that will be associated with that.
Right. That brings me to kind of to our next topic, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart. And so, and you're right. And it's funny because you read in the news that, and I don't know whether it's just for sensationalization, it's just the media. Sometimes we'll say things like, they're introducing robots and they're getting rid of labor. And what you find is that the reality is we're shifting labor from one task to another. We're making labor, we're attempting to make labor more efficient and more productive so that we can get more out of it. And the fact is, in the areas where we find distribution hubs and nodes, the unemployment has typically been at historic lows. And so, that may be a little bit impacted by the last year, but the trend is going to continue. And so we've got to get better getting more out of the labor we have. And that comes to whenever we talk about technology, you have to marry that with the people and process. And what's interesting is I think we're going to move from a model where we had a lot of labor that didn't have to have a certain set of skills. And now we're introducing higher level technologies that may require a higher level of skill sets. And Tim, I'm kind of curious. I know that your organization consumes a tremendous amount of labor, and that you have a huge footprint in the local economies. I'm kind of curious what you're seeing from a labor market and understanding how increasing technology is also kind of forcing you to go out and find a higher caliber of labor, and kind of what is the impact to your business as you do this?
Well, whenever we bring people and process technology together, there's always that human interface with a machine. So what this is doing in the labor market for us is we're having to drive automation down to a much lower need. For example, we would normally automate larger buildings because we can cost justify that. But on a smaller building, we rely more on a labor. But with the tighter labor force in certain markets, we're forced to spend the money to automate. And with that, we have to make sure that wherever there's interface between the people and technology, that we provide the proper training. Safety is key. When you're not used to working around a machine, and all of a sudden you bring a machine around and you ask people to work with that machine, we have to make sure that it's a safe environment, first of all. We also have to make sure that we train them so that they have the skills that they need to operate the equipment. Regardless, they have to operate the equipment safely. And that's really the challenge that we have right now, is because the safety requirement between the human and machine interface that's forced in by automation.
And that's critical. Anytime, as an engineer, anytime we start developing solutions, if we're not contemplating how it impacts the labor force, what skill sets are required, what the local labor market brings to bear, what the educational facilities in the local labor market are, so that I know what my base is, then we probably missed a piece to this, right? And I think that's only going to get, as this transformation accelerates, I think the need for higher and higher skilled labor is just going to keep putting a challenge on all of the employers and all of the providers. So it's very critical. So Lou, I know as part of your practice, when you develop solutions, you're looking at a holistic. So it's not just the pieces of metal and how a box moves from, one door and out the other, but it's how labor is impacted. And so I'm kind of curious, from your perspective, what the market's kind of telling you. How do you help customers learn how to interact with the increasing level of technologies and the demands?
Okay, well, first of all, I can start with a comment that we've just recently completed a survey of our clients to determine, what are the biggest concerns they have for 2021 and going forward. And labor is the number one concern that they all are expressing. And so what's really happening here is I think you're going to see that the technology is going to allow a certain level of reduction in terms of the talent pool requirements. So many of the technologies now are geared towards basically that almost gamer type mentality. In other words, if you can play on a screen, you can certainly push a screen on a robot as an example, or a GTP unit, and be successful in interfacing with that. So I think what you're going to see is kind of two things: the ability to potentially open up to a slightly larger labor market for those tasks that interface easily with equipment, and also our task related that you can easily train new associates on there, because we all know turnover is another critical aspect in fulfillment. So I think it will potentially open a larger portion of the labor pool for some of those capabilities. On the other end, you're going to have the challenge of, this equipment needs to be maintained, and you need the technicians with the skill sets and the systems people to be able to integrate those in operation. So it's a combination of kind of getting the higher level skills to support it. And so many of these technologies are really being developed as a service type technology, so that they're actually supported directly by the providers of those pieces of equipment. So there's going to be more demand for technical assistance, but there's also, I'm hoping, going to be a broader audience that will be able to fulfill the jobs that there are requiring these things.
Right. No, that's a good point. And hopefully our education system is keeping up with that. So we need more young people to understand the breadth and the depth of supply chain and supply chain management. And so we do see a lot of ray of hope, and there are a lot of smart folks that are entering into it, not just us old guys that have been doing this for 20 or 30 years. So Tim, when you look at the breadth of the technologies that are available today, and and we start putting them into categories, and we've got robotics that do manual tasks now. They're singulating, they're inducting, they're feeding foot walls, and we have data analytics now, the machine learning that's doing predictive analytics. We have it's just, it goes on and on. What is the one, I guess, the biggest, most impactful change, introduction of technology that you see that's going to impact your business? So is there one that you said, this one is going to be a game changer for us when we're able to figure out how to integrate this in our current network and our current model, this will be a game changer for us? What is that? What is that one piece, Tim?
I think the AI is going to be key going forward for us. We today rely on people to make judgment on the type of product we handle. For example, we might have maybe a package that we would not put on automated equipment just because of the weight, shape, or the size of it. On the flip side, we might have something that's just too small to put on the same piece of equipment. So we have different platforms for handling different products. And today we make the judgment call as to what goes on what sort of platform through human judgment. It would be nice. I think going forward, in fact, we have been testing some AI products, to be able to classify these products as they come into our building, so we can efficiently and effectively handle the product and sort them through our building. So AI is key, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I think and I don't disagree. It's funny because for years now we've had a tremendous amount of data, but we haven't had the ability to effectively use that data to help make decisions. And Lou, when you start looking at a lot of warehouse and distribution solutions, it's funny because they all come down to a couple key people in your building that start driving activity and the way labor is used. And the demand for solid real-time decision-making based off of a myriad of inputs, probably too much for a single person to consider, is, has been probably the single biggest log jam in a lot of solutions. And whether it's the wave processor or the order fulfillment person, or in trying to figure out I'm the conductor of the orchestra. And now, but I'm one person and I'm bombarded by all of these tasks. And so, when Tim starts talking about predictive analytics and machine learning and AI, and I believe there'll always be a person in the loop, but helping them with the decision process, helping them in the real time it probably is one of the most critical pieces that we have. The machines to go around it will keep making the advances, but as processing power continues to evolve, it's going to be interesting to see how analytics and machine learning and AI starts driving the activity in the warehouse. Do you have anything? So I'm just kind of curious, Lou, when your clients come to you, are they all want what is it? They want the easy button. So everybody wants that, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And there's an old adage that is still true, maybe even truer today than ever. You can't manage what you can't measure. And what that really says is that data is really that secret elixir that allows you to make decisions in a timely fashion. And the good news is that that myriad of data that's coming through these days, we now have tools that can really manipulate that in a real-time environment and really get the appropriate data at the level that people need to the decision makers in an appropriate amount of time. So it is that gathering of all the data from all of the systems, pulling it together, but putting it together in a manageable fashion. And I think the companies that we're working with, we're seeing more and more interest in just that data analytics tools and capabilities to be able to help them actually do that management of the facilities, which is what they're supposed to be doing. But the more data, the better. But it's got to be in a meaningful fashion, and that's where we're seeing a lot of the tools really shining these days.
So that's really a great transition into one of our last topics. It's how do we develop solutions that are flexible enough to be future proof? And so we try to develop solutions in general and make them data driven. And so, in the past, it's always how good is my data? What is, do I understand it? And I'm designing for something that happened a week ago, a month ago. And now I'm trying to figure out how do I use that data and project forward so that I can make smart decisions and design for the future. So Tim, I'm kind of curious the impact when you start looking at new building design, new equipment selection and technology, and what is I guess, how do you solve that making things future ready? And I know there's no solution, but what do you do today to kind of to convince everybody up and down the chain that we are ready for what's coming?
Well, I'll start by saying that, first of all, traditionally or in the past, we've always have a dedicated line for a certain kind of specific product. It's not unusual to have 3 lines in our buildings, one for handling small parcels, one for handling larger parcel, and one for handling much larger parcels. But going forward, in fact, with the one of the projects we have in Boimer, actually at Chino, Harvey Chino, our plan is to be able to handle multiple size products on the same line. And when we combine that with AI, we'll be able to streamline products to our building. It will actually result in much less labor need going forward. So AI combined with ability to handle multiple type products on the same line will be a way for us to better utilize our building. It will also allow us to easier scale up if we need to, because now instead of scaling so many different ways, we can scale just by designing to handle the same, using the same equipment to handle multiple products versus having to multiply the same, the 3 lines so many different ways. We can just do it three ways and be done.
Yeah, that's a tough challenge. What's interesting is everybody wants everything right now and they want it for free. And what is done to the product distribution in the network is from a small to large. Now I'm looking at handling, it's no longer bell shaped. And so, and I appreciate that. It's a tough challenge is how do I handle a 4 inch by 4 inch by, 10 millimeter thick package at the same time as I'm handling a 60-inch long package, 60 by 30 by 30 package. And how do I do both of them in an environment that's extremely challenging? You're exactly right. So Lou, same thing, because you look at you look at this stuff every day, and you're brought with different challenges. What are when customers start talking about future proof, and how do you convince them that they need to put that into their decision cycle? Sometimes it's not ROI justifiable because it's 3 or 4 years down the road, maybe, or maybe it's 1 year down the road. I guess when you have those hard discussions with your clients, what are their opinions on engineering a future ready solution?
Okay, well, I think you've hit on the two key words here. I mean, whenever we've worked with clients over the years, we always stress that, you know, we need to design to something, but at the same time, we need to use the words of flexible and scalable as part of that evaluation process. And the trends that we're seeing right now is that, we're seeing less and less being, I'll say, hard bolted to the floor, and more that is movable around in a facility. I think what you'll see is, we'll always have needs for conveyors. We'll always obviously have need for storage rack. But, beyond that, the ability to now have, you know, basically AGVs and AMRs that can move around and can flex, and they can flex, in terms of the size of the number of pieces of equipment. A lot of those are now being offered as a service, and people are ramping up for peak seasons, et cetera. So, the key is, I think, a trend towards more truly flexible solutions that can scale up easily with less hard automation that is really fixed in location. So those are the basic trends that we're evaluating with our clients. And we are also seeing that clients are starting to look at a little bit longer ROIs if there's the benefit of some of these capabilities of flexible and scalable. So, I think some of the decisions that have been strictly in the past kind of made up in the financial department are now going to start being influenced heavily by people in the supply chain department as well, to say there's got to be a mix here that allows us to stay ahead of the curve.
No, that's fantastic, and I appreciate the thoughts. So, gentlemen, we're winding up our time together. It's I could talk about this for hours on end because it's really something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm a little bit of a supply chain geek, so I enjoy these conversations. I appreciate your time. I'll give you just a last minute if there's something on a thought that comes to mind if you want to share, and if not, that's okay too. So, Tim, did you have any final comments that you wanted on the topic?
Yeah, I think it's been great being on this panel here. One thing I would say to part is that from our point of view, we have to be flexible enough and be willing to trade efficiency for scalability in order to maintain service. In other words, there are times when we're gonna have to make do with what we have, and that sometimes will mean creating efficiency to be able to scale up and meet service.
Oh, that's fair enough. Lou, any final thoughts, Lou?
Well, yes, I'd say safe to say that, while this is a very exciting time, it's also a very challenging time in terms of how do I make the choices between what solutions to put in there. And, I wouldn't be a consultant if I didn't say, well, we're here to help with you doing some of that decision making. But, the reality is, just make sure that you're doing the due diligence to actually evaluate the options. And, we're all getting inundated every day with something new. I can certainly expect that there will be shakeouts in the marketplace for some of the technologies. And I think you just need to be aware of that as you're making your decisions, and select partners that are going to give you the best opportunity for success. Other than that, just thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you and with the audience today.
Fantastic. Tim, Lou, thank you so much for joining us. We'll close this out. And I very much appreciate everybody that joined us for this afternoon session. Again, thank you very much.